into it. This week and last week, we did a lot of information on back, right? So back's obviously massive, not just muscle group, several muscle groups, okay? So we talked about, and specifically, we talked about basically the lats, which most people know about. Like, that guy's got like really great lats. But even if you look at, like, for example, if you look at bikini, having a really nice back is actually very important for bikini as well, okay? So it's super important. So I think understanding the back and the dynamics and how to train the back is very important. And so that's what we're going to do today, is talk about training the back. Now, we have the lats, which we typically think about back thickness, right? So, you know, like you're doing a double bicep pose, you kind of see your lats pop. If you do like a lat spread, you see your lats come out. That's the lats, like the width of the back. But you also have kind of the center, the thickness of the back and the detail of the back, especially around the mid part of the back. And that detail around the shoulder blades is really like, that's actually the center traps as well as the rhomboids is what we talked about, okay? So again, the width of the back we think of as the lats. That middle detail, when you know, like the back's making music, that's when we talk about being like the rhomboids and the center traps, okay? So the lats, basically themselves, they originate along the spine, okay? So think about like the spine, that, you know, your spine, your backbone, whatever you want to call it. They originate on the backbone all the way down to the glutes. And they insert on the arm. So what does that mean? The lat's primary movement is going to be at the arm, okay? So it's going to be at the arm. If you originate on the spine and you insert on the upper arm, that means when I flex my lats, it's going to move my arm. It's going to move it in several directions. We actually have, if you look at the lats, you have the upper lats, the middle lats, and the lower lats, right? So if someone's talking about like, I want more like upper lat width, that's one point. But if you're talking about like kind of down, tapering closer down to the waist, that's the lower lats, right? They go kind of like this. So you have the upper lats, the lower lats, and in between the middle lats, right? Well, all of these have different functions. But the lats in general have a couple main functions, and those main functions are going to be, number one is going to be to what we call, basically take your arms and bring your arms to your sides, okay? So if I'm taking my arms and bringing them to my sides, that's one action of the lats. Different exercises are going to target that, right? So how would I bring my arms to the side during exercise? Well, if I'm doing a wide grip lat pull down, technically I'm loading the movement of bringing my arms to the sides. We call that adduction. But basically I'm bringing my arms to the sides, okay? So it's the first action of the lats. The second action of the lats is, say like I'm hammering a nail, boom, boom. Well, bringing my arm down and back, it's called extension, okay? So lats also extend. They extend the arm, okay? And that means that basically I'm taking my arm and bringing it down to my side. So my arm's up here and I'm bringing it down, that's extension, okay? So if I pound my fists on the table right now, technically I'm extending the arm because I'm moving it backward, okay? So extension is a focus of the lats, okay? So wide grip lat pull downs is bringing my arms to the sides, but if I did close grip lat pull downs, what am I doing? I'm extending the arm back. So essentially the lats also focus as extensors, okay? So think as bringing my arms to the side or moving my arms back. That's what the lats do. They're arm extensors and arm adductors. So wide grip lat pull downs take advantage of the essentially the adduction, or the bringing my arms to the side, and then moving my arms back is the extension component of things, okay? So that is basically the lats function, to extend my arm and to bring my arm to the side, okay? Next thing I'm going to talk about is that middle back, right? The middle back, how do I get the middle back thickness, that detail, that music in the back? That's the middle traps, and that's the rhomboids. When you look, you can see the middle traps, it's kind of that thickness around the spine, and the rhomboids are on the actual shoulder blades, or what we call the scapula, right? So you can kind of see your scapula. You can feel it. If you reach back right now, you can feel your shoulder blades. Like everyone, feel your shoulder blades right now, okay? Andy and Paul are doing it. I'm doing it. That right there is the spine of the scapula, right? Now, you know what your spine is itself, like the backbone, whatever you want to call it, the vertebrae. These muscles, the center traps and the rhomboids, they originate on the spine, and they come out and they insert onto the clavicle. Excuse me, the scapula. Okay. So what does that mean? Basically, you're attaching kind of your shoulder blades. So if you're on the spine and you attach to the shoulder blades, what am I going to do? It's going to squeeze my shoulder blades together. Okay. So the center back's main job is to squeeze the shoulder blade together. Okay. And that's, I think, very, very important to sort of understand. So I'm squeezing the shoulder blade together. When I do that, I'm activating the center back, right? So if I'm doing like a bent over row, for example, by nature, by the end of that movement, I'm squeezing my shoulder blades together. I'm going to build center back thickness, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying is that anytime you squeeze the shoulder blades together, I'm activating those center back muscles, the rhomboids, and the center traps, okay? So that's the anatomy lesson. So now what I'm going to talk about, that actually is one of the studies we talked about. So now let's go through all the infographics and talk about the studies. The first study we talked about is, can I activate the back better by squeezing the shoulder blades first, okay? And the answer is yes. So say I'm doing a rowing movement. Most people, when they're doing row movements, say I'm doing seated rows, they're just going to row, right? They're just going to row forward, back and forth, back and forth. But if I start the rowing movement itself by first initiating by squeezing the shoulder blades together and then rowing, and then coming back, letting that squeeze go, squeezing the shoulder blades, and then rowing, research shows you're going to get about more than 10% muscle activation when you do that, okay? So the take-home message is that you want to initiate the movement with what the lats actually do, okay? Or what the center back actually does. My point is that when you're lifting, start at the scapula, squeeze the scapula together, your shoulder blades together, then row. So that's the first thing. That was the first lesson. The next lesson we talked about was muscle fiber makeup, okay? And I know one of you guys asked that, right? So basically when we talk about muscle fiber makeup, the lats and the center traps are roughly about 50% fast and 50% slow. Slow twitch muscle fibers. So that means about 50% of your workouts need to be more toward the heavier range of lifting and compound movements, and 50% of them need around like higher repetition training, right? So when I say high reps, I'm talking about more like 12 and above repetitions, 12 to 20 reps, maybe even some days monster reps, like 30 repetitions. Your rest period lengths are going to be shorter during that time, probably anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds rest, okay? If you're going heavier, then you're going to go more like anywhere from a 6 to 10 repetition range. If you're a bodybuilder, no less than 5 reps. If you're a power lifter, it's different. But if it's 5 to 10 reps and you're going to rest more like 2 minutes, 3 minutes between sets, so you have a chance to go as heavy as humanly possible, okay? So it's 50% of the time. So our next lesson that we're going to talk about is going to be essentially what we talked about yesterday was how you load the spine. So say I'm trying to train my lats, okay? If I can do movements that load my spine and train my lats, or unload my spine and train my lats, okay? Case in point, if I'm doing a bent over barbell row, when I stand up and bend over, my spine is having to support that barbell. So I'm loading basically the spinal erectors, or the muscles that keep my spine erect. So basically, when I'm doing a bent over row, my spine, the muscles that support my spine are being loaded, and also my lats as I row are being loaded, and so are the center back and traps. Now, I could do a rowing movement that doesn't load my spine. I could lay on a bench that's a machine. I can lay forward on a bench, grab that same barbell, and row it to my chest. My spine is not being loaded. Studies show that if I don't load the spine, I get more lat activation. Okay? So basically what it means is that if I'm not loading my spine, but I'm just loading the lats, by laying down, say on an incline bench or a somewhat high bench, and I'm rowing, my spine's not being loaded, I actually get more muscle activation. Okay? So that's the point, is that you want to make sure you include a lot more of those isolation type movements to do that. Okay? The next thing the next lesson that I'm going to talk about, basically, that it actually came out yesterday.
Yep.
It's talking about range of motion. Okay, the lats are meant to function ideally more on the second half of the range of motion. Okay, so mechanically they have a better mechanical advantage. They function better mechanically if I do a pull up or a lat pull down on the second half of the range of motion. Okay. So they have better range of motion, more in the middle actually, more in the middle range of motion, okay? So when I'm up here, the lats don't function as well. So you'll actually see a lot of people do pull-ups and stuff like that. They're like partial pull-ups. And it's because the lats function better in that range of motion, so it's kind of easier to do that. Now studies show though, intriguingly enough, that muscle activation is actually greater in the second half of the lat pull-down than the first half. People might take this to go, oh, it's okay, I should just do those partial reps. That's not correct, okay, because you get the most muscle damage in the lengthened position, okay? So basically what it means is that when you're doing lat pull downs or you're doing pull-ups, for the damage effect, you want to do the full range of motion. So you make sure when you do a pull-up, you're getting that full range of motion for the muscle damage. But when you come down, you want to make sure that, that it's important that you're squeezing and focusing all the way down, because that's when you're getting most of the muscle activation, meaning fast twitch muscle fiber recruitment, but also metabolic stress and cell swelling is going to happen down on this portion. The main thing is make sure you're hitting the lats from the full range of motion so you get maximum muscle damage, but also maximum muscle activation. The next thing we're going to talk about is a real interesting concept, okay? Say Andy and I go in the gym and we're training today, we're going to hit back today, okay? So say Andy's going to do some lat pull downs, right? So he's coming and he's going to do lat pull downs, and he's coming out. It's actually, maybe say Andy rolls over here for a second. Yeah, roll over. So actually, like let's say that you're going to so he's doing lat pull downs. So like pretend to do lat pull downs, and I'm like, yeah, right there, Andy, right there. So I'm actually having him, I'm putting my hands where I want the muscle to focus. So actually now I might be focused on his center back. Studies show just by palpating the back where I want him to squeeze, you get greater muscle activation just by doing that. So that is basically a technique you can use with your training partner, where basically it's like what we did with Andy. You're palpating the area you want to be more activated. So if it's the lats, you're maybe just palpating that, and it's a cueing sensation that actually increases his ability to drive activation to that muscle. So it's a palpating technique and it works really well. Also, so if he's focusing on the muscle and you're palpating at the same time, you get maximum muscle activation. So that's kind of, that is that. The last thing is, a lot of people might ask, like, hey, when I'm doing a bit of a row, where should I row? Should I row to the upper abs? Should I row to the lower abs? Well, it depends on the goal, okay? So your lats, you have upper lats, middle lats, lower lats, and the mechanical advantage changes depending on what you're doing. So the upper lats actually will have a better mechanical advantage when your arms are actually when they're flexed, okay? When you're doing a rowing motion. So when I mean flex, I mean move my arm up. So it's like when my arms are about right here and I have my arms flexed, to the upper abs, I have a better mechanical advantage to row with my upper lats. However, if I don't move my arms up a lot, there's a better mechanical advantage for my lower and mid lats. What that means is that when I row to my lower abs, I'm going to have my lower lats and middle lats have better activation or better mechanical advantage. So rowing to the lower abs, you're going to more target the middle and lower lats. Rowing to the upper abs, you're going to more target the upper lats. And so basically we feel that doing overhand, more of an overhand sort of wide grip is going to target the upper lats. But if I do underhand, it's easier to row to my lower abs. So then you're going to hit the lower lats there. The one thing I want to mention again, going in that mechanical advantage, guys, is to realize that mechanical advantage changes for the lats all throughout the range of motion, okay? So, and that's very important to understand. You have upper, middle, lower lats. So if I'm doing, for example, if I'm doing, the upper lats have better mechanical advantage, for example, for adduction, meaning bringing my arms to the side. So if I'm going to do wide grip lat pull downs, that could be beneficial for my upper lats. However, the lower lats and even mid lats are a better mechanical advantage for extending the arm. So if I do close grip lat pull downs and I'm extending the arm back, that will target my lower lats better than maybe a wider grip lat pull down. So that the take home message is that you want to hit your lats from as many angles as possible if you want to hit them from the upper all the way to the lower sweep. So to sum things up, the lats originate on the spine, they insert on the upper arm. That means they're going to have a couple of different major actions. One's going to be to extend the arm, one's going to be to adduct the arm. So that's important. The center back, basically their main job is going to be to squeeze the shoulder blades together. So rowing movements, horizontal movements with squeeze the shoulders together are going to be very, very important. The next thing we talked about, actually, Nicholas is talking about palpating. You basically can, if you palpate the back, you'll actually get more muscle activation. And this goes to Nicholas's point, is it just the cueing or the sensation? So if you use like a hot cream, would it increase activation of the muscle? Theoretically, as a cue, it could. The next thing we talked about was basically if I'm rowing, if I row to my upper abs, I hit the upper lats. If I row the lower abs, I hit the lower lats. I think those are 50-50 fast and slow twitch. The lats are 50% fast, 50% slow. And the last thing is unloading the spine allows you to activate more of the lats than loading the spine. So guys, that is the lesson for today. Now what I'm going to do is take your questions. While I'm doing that though, do me a favor guys. If you're on Facebook, share this post. Just hit share. I don't think there's a share feature on Instagram. So, but yeah, if you're on Facebook, please hit share. That way we can continue to reach the whole Muscle PhD community, because we're a community here, guys. And what's our goal? All of us collectively is let's change lives. So you guys listening to this, as if you get this information, do me a huge favor. Share the information out there and help another fellow lifter get bigger, or help another fellow lifter get shredded, or reach their body composition goals. That way we have a community going on here. The more people we help, the better. So I'm going to start answering questions. Caleb says, Dr. Wilson, how many weeks should someone bulk or cut? Don't bulk for like more than 4 weeks, or without changing it up. Okay, that is number 1, Hawaii and diver. Cool, I gotta make my way out to Hawaii. I got 2 tears in my shoulder that I rehabilitated that still hurts when I do pull-ups and shoulder presses. What do you suggest? For you, you're probably gonna need to take advantage of more like the basically lighter lifting and higher reps are going to be more positive for you, because you got to be careful with the heavier less, and even blood flow restriction can help, to be honest. Best exercise for back that doesn't get your forearms. Here's the thing. One thing I will say is that I think training your grip could be important as a bodybuilder. So, for example, I used to use straps all the time, but as I continue to lift, I didn't need them as much. So if your forearms are wearing out, there's a couple of things you do. Number 1, you could use chalk, and there is actually chalk you can get. Like, well, I don't want to bring that to the gym and make a big mess. Well, there's actually chalk you can put on your hands that stays on there and stays on the whole time. It's like called liquid chalk. If you put that on, your forearms are not going to really get taxed. You can also get specific handles, like Prime Fitness USA actually just sent us some new handles. And they're customized so it's easier to grip so your forearms don't get worn out. But they also have a really good range of motion. And so have you been?
Absolutely.
They're freaking awesome, man.
Right.
Like, there are these handles. It's not, you know, like the little handles are annoying and like they'll bang up against my wrist and like you try and just like manipulate them. They're just annoying and they're like on a circle, so like they're moving around and you're trying to get it from moving around. Well, these things from Prime Fitness USA, you got to check them out. They're like a hook type of grip and they're really comfortable, biomechanically comfortable. And so literally 2 days ago I was training with Ryan, getting like the best back pump ever, and my range of motion was great and I wasn't focusing on the handles, so I definitely recommend the Prime USA handles. Where do you row for deadlift / overhand presses? Where do you row? So I'm not sure what you mean on like deadlifts, but like as far as grip on deadlifts, you know, if you're gonna go heavy, use an overhand, underhand grip. For deadlifts, if you're talking about working the center back, maybe that's your question. It's from the bottom range of motion to the middle range of motion that's activating the center back more, whereas the second half of the deadlifts, like the upper traps, the first half of deadlifts is more like that center back. So you don't want to do like rack pulls if you're trying to hit the center back. Okay, VBar Pulldown, one great exercise for lats. Yeah, it is, but the thing about the VBar Pulldown is you're closer, so you're getting more extension, so that's going to be better for that lower lat region, right? So if you're doing the wider grip, that's going to be more for the upper lats. I kind of want to answer Alex's question. Is back depth and thickness a misnomer? I don't really think so. I think basically you had to look at the community, right? Just because the scientific community doesn't talk about back thickness, so what? Like, the scientific community is chasing and trying to discover what you guys have already discovered, right? So bottom line is that, like, is there a thickness component to back? Yes. You can't find that in a textbook? So what? So, I mean, you know what I mean? Rewrite the textbooks as far as I'm concerned. But the bottom line is it exists. There's depth to the back. There's thickness to the back. So, absolutely. And muscle fire, you know, so that's my point. I'm going to get off my...
Oh, I got you.
Best exercise for lower traps. John, you've been patient, friend. You have been patient, John. And I'm going to answer your question right now. Because you have been patient, thank you for following the Muscle Ph.D. community. When you're going to train the lower traps, they actually depress the scapula. So best thing to do is like you do lat pull downs like this and literally do a reverse shrug. So normally you do a shrug like this for the upper traps. You're going to do a reverse shrug. Pull the arms down. That's the best way to hit the lower traps. Way to stay in the game, John. All right. Jake, good, nice name. I like it. If you could only do one exercise for the lats and one for traps, what would it be? Thanks for doing what you do. Thank you, Jake. I really appreciate it. I would do pull-ups, kind of like more of a neutral grip, so you hit both, you know, all areas of the lats as best you can. And if it were traps, man, to be honest, like, I mean, I like shrugs, but if I'm trying to hit all the traps, probably deadlifts. Because, like, on the way down and all the way up, like, this guy right here, Paul's got thick traps. Thick traps, right?
I built them up. They're getting bigger.
And he does a lot of deadlifts, right? So
I do. That is true. I don't ever do any shrugs. I do all deadlifts.
Yeah. I mean, I did deadlifts the other day. Like, my traps are still sore. I mean, you know. I need to do more deadlifts. Admittedly so.
It's okay.
So,
all right, it's that time.
Okay, so just guys, now what we're going to do is rapid fire, like really, really rapid fire.
I'm just going to try to point too.
Actually, should I answer that
Yep,
question?
go ahead.
Do you have a pen? Eric, thanks for your patience, buddy. Is there any science behind people who wear lifting belts doing most, not squat, doing
Great
most
question.
exercises? Does it keep the core tight or is it a safety mechanism? Well, I think the bottom line is that when you do, it changes muscle activation in the core. You're still using the core when you do it. It's just allowing you to use heavier weight, like when you do when you actually do weight. So if you can lift a heavier load, your core is still going to be activated. If you're doing like deadlifts or you're doing like squats, it's just going to be activated in a different way.
Okay, I'm just going to point.
Okay, guys, ready? We're going into rapid fire mode, which means I'm not going to explain anything. It's going to be closer to yes or no and really rapid. I'm going to get my first impression. Okay.
Get as many as we can go.
Okay, what is a good exercise to strengthen the scapula? Bent over rows. How often do you recommend training backs/lats? 2 to 3 times a week. Would you still retract the scapula first before doing a lat pull down? I would depress the scapula, reverse shrug. I'm going to wait till they say. Okay, lying dumbbell pullovers for upper lat development. That's going to be more lower lat development.
So long, go ahead.
Okay, when doing a wide lat pull down, I get tension on my shoulders. Is it because of the path and direction of the weight move? Well, you're going to get tension on your shoulders because you're going to use your rear delts, right? But still focus again on the lats. That should help. How much does palpitation help? About 12% increase in muscle activation. So yes, I do think it will be noticeable. Okay, so how many times do I recommend training the back? Again, I do like 2 to 3 times a week. What are your thoughts about keeping your thumb over the bar versus under the bar to help target the... Well, the lats aren't really targeted to here. So personally, I do like thumb over or whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. Retract shoulders for upper/lat rhomboid development. Yes. Yes, absolutely retract, or the scapula, retract the scapula. Intensity each set for hypertrophy, vary it between 6 to 10 reps with 3 minutes rest and 12 to 20 reps with 30 to 60 seconds rest. You've got to periodize for hypertrophy. Don't you consider deadlifts a great workout for quads and stiff leg deadlifts for hamstrings? Well, I think that deadlifts, they're not going to be the best. Actually, you'll activate the quads slightly, but they're not the best for quads. If you do sumo, they will activate the quads, but I don't consider deadlifts the best quad exercise. That's more squats. Behind the neck or in the front of the neck pull downs. Behind the neck is going to get more scapular retraction and therefore more center back. And then, whereas, what was the other question? Oh, whereas to the front will allow you to focus more on the lats, particularly the upper lats. Okay? What's that quote? Love your job. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely love my job too. Like, I really love my job, like a lot. I find it quite difficult to get results in my back muscles. What can I do about it? I do get faster results in it. Well, I mean, I would say that you need to up your training frequency on your back. Maybe prioritize them. Train them like 4 to 5 times a week, to be honest. Hit your center back one day, hit the lats the next day, and then basically switch up the repetitions. But I hit it at least 4 to 5 times a week for the next 6 weeks. See what happens. Benefits of low volume training. You can have higher intensity when you do lower volume training, and you can recover faster with lower volume training. But volume is very, very important, so don't just do the same thing all the time. HMB or HMB-free acid, I like free acid. Should traps be used much during back session, or we try to limit it because you hit it in other days? It's hard to eliminate the traps doing back, so I think doing traps the same day as back is actually a good move. But also throw it in on shoulder days, right?
Last one.
Oh, can you BFR for back?
Ooh,
yes. What happens is that if I add straps around my arms won't be as effective, and the nervous system recruits the back more in that case. So the answer is yes.
Cool.